Today I'm at Buzzworks in Hitchin, Hertfordshire. It's a fantastic centre where you can learn all about bees. There's a visitor centre with displays, a garden with about 60 different varieties of plants in it that bees love, and also a teaching apiary with around 10 working hives. And it's run by Robin Dartington, one of the expert beekeepers who helped us develop the bee house. Robin, hi.
Johannes.
Good to see you again. How's the beekeeping going this year?
Well, I think it's about time we had a look at this hive.
Yeah.
It's not been inspected for a month, and I'm hoping that we're going to find at least one good laying queen, possibly two.
So have you split this colony then?
Yes, it was split for swarm control in May. Hopefully, by splitting it, we managed to control the swarming instinct completely. And so we've now got, hopefully, two colonies, one at each end, and with new queens.
Excellent, good.
Now, we find underneath the roof my little record sheet. It's a minimal note, but it tells me that on the 6th of June, the rear colony had clear patches. That almost always means that they think they've got a queen who's ready to come in to lay. And that's the same situation at the front, though it's only a very small colony. That was the 6th of June. We're now the 23rd of June, and that should be plenty of time for those queens to come in to lay.
Excellent.
But I have to warn you that in beekeeping nothing is certain.
Yeah.
So I'll just see what's happening inside this super. And the bees are fully occupying it and working quietly. Now that seems fine. I'm going to lift that box off so that I can inspect the bottom. Yes, there's a fair weight in there, which is good.
So what would you say is the sort of, the knack to being a good beekeeper? And
You need to be calm. You mustn't panic the bees. They don't really object to the light coming into the hive, but it's vibration that sets them off.
Right.
It's not vibration that makes them think they're being attacked by a predator.
You've hardly smoked them at all, and they're
No.
not really fazed by you looking at them.
No, I prefer not to use smoke when there's a honey flow on, as there is now, because the bees will be quite calm and peaceful.
When there's plenty to eat, they just get on with it.
Yes, they're happy, like any animal that's got a full tummy.
Yeah.
It's when it's cold and they're starving that they are much more aggressive. Now there's a good frame of brood here. So this looks like a well-mated queen.
What are these, where there's sort of holes and gaps?
There are two theories on this. Mostly people say it's where there's a wire, and if they're in a straight line, then there's a wire underneath.
Like the foundation wire
That's right.
Yeah.
But the new theory is that these holes are left deliberately for bees that have warmed themselves up to put their heads in and warm up the comb.
Because they need to keep the brood at about 35 degrees, don't they?
They do indeed.
It's pretty hot.
Yes, it's keeping it up to our body temperature. Of course, they don't heat the air, they do heat the comb.
You haven't got any queen excluders on, is that normal practice, or did you?
Well, I don't tend to put the queen excluders on if I can help it, because if you notice the bees trying to struggle through them to get up into the supers, it's obviously a very big impediment to the free movement of goods within the hive.
But the risk obviously is that the super, when we open it up, will have some brood in it, which makes honey collection tricky.
Well, it does mean that we need to put the queen excluder on at least a month before the super will come off for extraction. And any brood in it, then have emerged.
Okay.
Well, I'm surprised we've not seen the queen anywhere. It may well be that she's up in that super. Now there is brood, so we have got a full frame of brood. She might well be up here then in that case. No?
No. Do you ever find the queen actually sort of on honey, or does she always feed herself, or do the other bees feed her?
The other bees feed her, but she is supposed to actually walk around the whole of the hive, leaving what is called footprint pheromone. And it's that presence, that pheromone on the combs wherever the bees go, that assures them that they have got a queen within the hive. I'm surprised we haven't found the queen, because there's not very many bees on this at the moment, but we haven't. And sometimes you find them and sometimes you don't. So I'm going to put the queen excluder on then and assume that we have got her below. But I think it'll be enough if I now just smoke from here, and that will drive most of the bees down. In particular, the queen, if she is here, she won't want that smoke and she will go down. But I'll have to come back in about 3 days and see if I've got eggs below.
Right. The alternative to doing that, Robin, is to shake the bees off the comb.
Yes, shake them right into the bottom of the hive.
And you just give it a sharp...
Best, I think, to hold is not to knock the frame, but to knock your wrist.
Right.
So if you've got the frame like that, hold one end, hold it well down in, and bang your wrist.
And the bees don't get damaged doing that?
No, they're very light and they'll drop. Look, there's no bees there that are not moving. They're okay. So I'm going to put the queen excluder on now so that the queen won't be able to get back into that box if she's below. And I can put on the super, which I like to call a honey box in English.
You see the second colony on this side has got a nice super full of honey.
So shall we have a quick look in this one?
Yeah, and perhaps we could find the queen as well.
And we may be lucky.
We may be lucky.
Right. Now notice, not very many bees in this one, so I don't think that's so likely to have any of the brood. I can see sealed honey all the way down here in the middle, so there won't be brood in this one. Because if there was brood, it would be right to the bottom of these middle bars here. So I don't think we'll need to search that one for the queen on this side of the hive.
So on this half of the hive, Robin, there's a lot more frames than on the front. Why is that?
Well, when I divided it, the queen went to the front with, as it were, the swarm, and then this is the parent colony, which had the brood. And it's got more bees because they've now emerged from those brood frames.
So you left the old queen at the front of the hive with no brood?
That's right.
Yeah. So they're starting from scratch again, whereas this side is actually will raise a new queen then.
That's right.
To head that colony.
Right, I'll take these out to give us some room to work. That's just a dummy frame that fills up space. And these ones are fresh frames of foundation that the bees haven't yet become strong enough to draw out.
Do you always add new frames towards the front, Robin?
Well, I prefer to add them to the front because the bee's natural instinct is to keep the brood at the front near to the entrance of a hive. So they will grow the nest towards the entrance more easily than they'll grow it backwards. Now that these frames have got a bit more bees, I'm going to be careful to move it at an angle across the hive so that it's a looser fit and I'm not likely to brush the bees against the end. And then when these frames are heavy, very easy to just rest from there, and then they're as light as anything to inspect the two sides. And because I'm resting it on the way in which we're going, if a queen were to walk off, it doesn't matter because we'll find her on the next frame. As you can see, this is the old nest. These are dark frames.
So the colour of the wax is a good indicator of how long the frame has been in?
Yes. In my normal system, these frames will be withdrawn at the end of a season.
Right, that's part of your disease management?
That's right. Now here is a good patch of brood.
Do you have a technique for moving the bees out of the way so you can see what's underneath, for example, a queen cell? I use the back of my hand, I just bring it down and then that seems to clear them out of the way. Yes,
look, that's worked perfectly. Now, I'm holding the frame, so I can't use a hand like that. I can blow.
Oh, that worked much better. Robin, how often do you go through your bees?
Well, when they're running up to the swarming peak, which means from sometime in April right through to about the middle of June, you've got to look at them weekly. Once they've started to make swarming preparations, then you do this division business and such like, and they can be left then for about 3 weeks or so to settle down and see what comes out of it all.
So when you're looking for the queen, do you have a technique for that as well?
Well, you're meant to look around the edge first.
Yeah.
So in case the queen is just running off the edge, and then you go round in circles until the middle. But usually, if she's there, you just spot her straight away because of a different way in which she's moving. There she is at last.
Brilliant, what a relief.
Now see how purposeful she is. She's not just shimmying around like the bees, she's hunting.
I think she moves like a beetle because you really see her sort of striding across the frames. So we can mark her now, can we?
We can mark her now. Now to do that, I need to place the frame flat. Now these cover boards are very useful because you see the edges here. I can put it down and the bees on the underside are not going to get crushed. This is my little queen catching cage, which you won't want to go into. Sometimes with a plunger you can just push her in. But she is actually in that. If I slide that underneath.
So you've got all the worker bees in there now, is that a problem?
I've got worker bee. No, that's all right. What I want to do is to just get that plunger in. So I'm going to shake them down, take it off and put in the plunger. Right, she's got plenty of company in there.
Yeah.
And now I need to find a brush. The best brush grows in nature. And I like to cut the stalk square so it's going to produce a nice little round mark. Now we mustn't put too much paint on, that's the danger, and glue her wings together. And then she would be regarded by the bees as a defective queen. I've got to bring up the plunger until the queen is just held and unable to move. I dip into the paint and then a touch onto her thorax. There we are. And now I'm let her go so that the paint can dry.
How long does the drying take?
Well, now this is ordinary hobby acrylic paint, and that dries pretty quickly. So we'll leave it 2 or 3 minutes.
Yeah.
Put her in too early and you come back next time and you can't find a marked queen because as soon as it went in, the bees cleaned it all off.
And that lasts for a whole year, or do you sometimes have to redo it?
No, that'll last for a year.
Yeah.
Now, in the theory of beekeeping, you use a different colour paint for each year.
Yeah.
In 5 years, 5 colours, and then you'll be able to know which year you mark the queen in. But I think it's perfectly all right to use a single colour, and then keep a little record that you mark this queen on a certain day.
Right. I suppose if you're just beekeeping mainly for yourself and you're not sort of selling bees and that kind of thing, then that's fine, isn't it?
That's right. So we'll just rearrange the hive and get it ready before we put the queen back.
Right.
So now I can put back the frames which are ready for this nest to grow onto. So I think the time has come now to put her back with her family. It's been quite traumatic to be taken out and handled like this. It really shouldn't happen to a queen, you know. So we're going to let her introduce her very, very quietly, and you'll find now the bees will come up here. Look, they're coming up and starting to feed her through this. She hasn't been fed for a few minutes now, and when she's been fed, she'll walk down and walk in. I always think it's a good idea to let normality come back in again before you just sort of throw her in. Notice how powerful the pheromone of a queen is. I only put that down and immediately bees came and covered it, didn't they?
Yeah.
They can sense her presence.
So that means they must have missed her as well.
Yes. It only takes about half an hour for them to realise that the queen is missing, 20 minutes to half an hour.
Throughout the whole colony?
For the whole colony to start looking for the queen. Now before we put the extruders on, of course, we do have to release this queen.
So she's had ample time to...
She's had ample time now. I think now we're going to just gently, or do it by blowing.
There she goes. She just ran off in there.
She ran off and she ran down. Okay. Now she's been fed though, so...
Is there any danger that the queen might fly off when you do that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, that's why again you want to be very calm. So we put on our queen excluders and they fit tightly, you see. The queen is unable to get her thorax through these slots, and of course so are drones. So any drones which are in the supers do get trapped, but they're released when one makes the next inspection. Well, I think we can leave those bees now to work as nature intended.
Well, Robin, it's been fascinating as always, but it sounds like your brownies have arrived now for their beekeeping experience.
That's the purpose of Buzzworks Hitchings Community Garden, to do both professional beekeeping and to introduce it to the next generation.